The Ewing and the Restless spoilers shock. The truth about Aristotle Dumas has been leaking out in drips and eddies, and what began as a whisper in the gilded halls of Newman Enterprises is rapidly swelling into a torrent that threatens to sweep away every carefully laid plan he has ever made. Behind the scenes, two women, Amanda Sinclair and Lily Winters, are quietly shouldering the weight of this revelation, determined to stay composed long enough to piece together the full scope of his deceit. Amanda, whose sharp intellect first sensed that Dumas was more than the charming associate he pretended to be, has been pacing the polished floors of her penthouse suite, replaying every conversation, every offhand remark, every furtive glance. Lily, meanwhile, has lent her unwavering support to Victor Newman himself, joining him in private strategy sessions to pinpoint the saboteur who has insidiously wormed his way into the very fabric of the Newman empire. Yet despite Lily's fierce loyalty and Victor's own legendary tenacity, they find themselves repeatedly outwitted by Dumas's cunning. He covers his tracks so thoroughly that even the most sophisticated forensic audits return nothing but dead ends. And so the question hangs in the air like a thundercloud primed to break: when should they make their move? If they act too soon, they risk tipping Aristotle off, allowing him to tighten his grip and vanish like smoke before the walls close in. If they wait too long, he may have time to consolidate his power, ensnaring Amanda and perhaps others in his tangled web. Lily presses Victor for a timeline, her eyes fierce but tinged with worry. She knows that Victor's instincts lean towards swift, decisive action, yet she also remembers the few defeats he has suffered, and each one bore the signature of overconfidence. Amanda, listening from the adjoining room, clenches her fists as she contemplates the irony that she, whose whole career has been built on exposing hidden truths, now finds herself both the investigator and the victim of concealment. For it is Amanda who is most imperiled. Though she has amassed dossiers on Aristotle's every known misdeed, from offshore funding schemes to sabotaged product launches, she is at a loss to explain how he discovered her own vulnerability. Rumors swirl that he holds over her the specter of a mistake long past, a lapse in judgment that could unravel her reputation overnight. His power over her has grown so insidious that she now flinches at the ring of her own phone, fearful that any message might contain yet another veiled threat. Each morning she forces herself to don a steely smile for Lily's arrival, only to find that Lily, perceptive and caring, refuses to be placated by appearances. Lily greets her with gentle firmness. "Amanda, you can't carry this alone." Over mugs of steaming chamomile tea, she reminds Amanda that no matter how high Dumas's stakes, the bonds of friendship and loyalty run deeper. And it is in that moment of vulnerability, face flushed, eyes glistening, that Amanda finally lets down her guard. Tears slip down her cheeks as she whispers fragments of Dumas's blackmail, an old contract twisted, a confidante's betrayal discovered, a legal technicality weaponized. Lily listens without judgment, her own heart pounding as the full implications of Aristotle's leverage become clear. With the confession comes a renewed sense of purpose. No longer will Amanda bear the burden in silence. She entrusts Lily with the damning evidence, encrypted files and first-hand accounts that, once in Lily's hands, must be taken directly to Victor. The plan they hatch is as delicate as it is daring. First, Lily will orchestrate a chance meeting between Victor and Amanda under the guise of discussing charity partnerships, giving Amanda the cover she needs to hand over the proof. Next, Victor will feign ignorance of the specifics while publicly expressing confidence in Aristotle's integrity, luring Dumas into complacency. Finally, once Dumas believes he has nothing to fear, Victor will unleash the evidence. A coordinated release to regulators, a discreet leak to trusted media insiders, and legal action timed to coincide with a high-profile Newman Enterprises shareholder meeting. The goal is to strike so swiftly that Aristotle cannot pivot, leaving him exposed, discredited, and legally vulnerable before he can disappear into his network of safe houses and shell corporations. Yet even as the strategy crystallizes, the tension escalates. Amanda's hands tremble as she transfers the final folders to Lily's secure briefcase. Lily, in turn, steels herself for the confrontation that lies ahead, conscious that Aristotle's reach may extend into unexpected quarters, perhaps even among those they had once called allies. They share one last look, a silent pact that no matter what happens, they will stand together. The air between them crackles with both fear and determination, a potent mixture that will fuel every step of the operation. As dusk falls over Genoa City, Amanda retreats to her suite to confront Dumas one final time, buying Lily and Victor the precious hours they need to spring their trap. Lily watches her friend go, her mind already racing through contingencies, a sudden leak of documents, a bogus subpoena to flush Aristotle out, a backup plan involving an undercover testimony from an unexpected witness. Each scenario seems both plausible and precarious, and she knows that the difference between triumph and disaster hinges on flawless timing. When Amanda finally emerges, her expression is unreadable. She joins Lily at the Newman estate, where Victor awaits with a resolute yet cautious grin. In that moment, three unlikely conspirators stand united against a faceless adversary whose downfall will depend not on brute force, but on the precision of their resolve. They have chosen to intervene now. Neither too early nor too late, and they will do so with every ounce of courage they can muster. Because in the end, the secrets of Aristotle Dumas will be laid bare not by chance, but by the steadfast alliance of those he underestimated, a publisher with a shaken but unbroken spirit, a daughter whose loyalty knows no bounds, and a patriarch whose thirst for justice is matched only by his love for those he protects. It began with a single, shattering phone call in the early hours of a Milan spring morning. Amanda Sinclair had been jolted awake by the rasp of her own breath filling the sterile silence of her apartment. On the other end of the line, a voice she knew only too well delivered its ultimatum: if she did not travel immediately to Genoa City and assume the role of insider spy for Aristotle Dumas, her sister would be murdered. No ransom, no negotiation, only obedience. In that moment Amanda's carefully constructed new life, years of painstaking work rebuilding her reputation in publishing, the quiet contentment she had found in a sunlit loft overlooking the Duomo, shattered like glass under a hammer blow. She pressed her back against the cool plaster of her bedroom wall, tears streaming unchecked, as the gravity of her predicament settled like lead in her lungs. To refuse meant her family's annihilation, to comply meant betraying everyone she had ever trusted. There was no safe path forward, only the slow, dawning realization that the only way to save her loved ones was to become the very instrument of their potential destruction. By mid-afternoon, Amanda was on her way to Genoa, the journey a blur of business-class cabins and transalpine highways. She felt less like a woman and more like a marionette whose strings were pulled by a faceless puppeteer. Aristotle's demands were precise. Report nightly on Victor Newman's board meetings, relay intimate details of Claire's interactions with the Newman Foundation, and alert him to any plans that might threaten Dumas's own clandestine operations. Every instruction arrived encrypted, time-stamped, and unyielding. Failure to comply, the voice on the call had reiterated with icy calm, would result in the instant execution of her sister, transmitted live as proof. Amanda obeyed like a soldier fearing court-martial. She filed her reports with robotic efficiency, her spirit hollowing out with each dispatch. Yet every covert text message she sent was also punctuated by silent pleas for rescue, pleas that flew across the digital ether unanswered, until at last her only confidant, Lily Winters, intercepted the distress signals. Lily, ever the calm presence in Amanda's life, watched her friend's transformation with mounting alarm. First came the strange silences on the phone when Amanda would drift into a whisper to compose herself, then her sudden refusals of even Lily's concerned video calls. Recognizing that this was no ordinary corporate quarrel, Lily set into motion a plan that would rely on every resource she could muster in Genoa and Milan alike. She reached out to Claire Newman, whose contacts in Milan's medical establishment promised forged health records. Together they fabricated an urgent prognosis suggesting Amanda was on the brink of a life-threatening relapse if she did not remain under Dumas's direct supervision. This ploy, Lily hoped, would mask their true intentions, to lure Aristotle into a false sense of security and buy themselves the time needed for a daring extraction. Simultaneously, Lily dispatched encrypted instructions to Victor Newman, whom Amanda had begged to intervene. Victor's response was immediate. He retained a shadow team composed of former Interpol operatives and Newman Enterprises security specialists. They would converge on Milan under the guise of a corporate due diligence trip, their real mission concealed behind notebooks and briefcases. A small, unmarked ambulance was chartered under Lily's coordination with Porsche's nursing contacts, programmed with a GPS tracker and staffed by loyal medical professionals who owed Lily personal favors. In theory, Amanda would summon this ambulance herself at the appointed time, claiming she was too ill to continue her assignments, and it would whisk her away under the cover of darkness. From there, Victor's team would infiltrate the warehouse district where Aristotle's goons held Amanda's sister and ensure her safety before extracting the entire family to neutral ground. As dusk fell the day of the operation, Amanda's heart pounded so fiercely it threatened to rupture her ribs. She had memorized every detail of the ruse, the address she would text to Aristotle's men, the code word that would signal her compliance, the precise moment to board the ambulance. She wore a simple gray turtleneck and jeans, as innocuous as a ghost in the night, but inside she was a woman driven by desperation. When the call came, she told Lily that she was faint, that her vision blurred, and that she would need immediate medical attention. Within minutes, the ambulance, lights off, darkened windows, pulled up outside the warehouse. Amanda staggered from the front door, supported by one of Porsche's nurses, and slipped inside the back of the vehicle. The doors slid shut, and the ambulance merged into the flow of Milan traffic, weaving a path away from prying eyes. Behind her, Victor's operatives executed the second phase. Twin black SUVs peeled off from the central turnpike and entered the industrial quarter. They descended upon the warehouse with military precision. One team breached the side entrance, identified by Lily's precise intelligence, while another circled to prevent any escape. Inside, Amanda's sister, bound and frightened, huddled in a cold corner as Dumas's enforcers patrolled the cavernous space. They never saw the flashbang or heard the whispered commands in Sicilian from Victor's operative. One moment they reached to drag the family deep into the shadows. The next, they lay sprawled on the concrete, subdued by tranquilizer darts and stun cuffs. The sirens of the Milan Financial Crimes Unit approached, drawn not by alarm but by Lily's discreet warrant filing, which had nationalized the kidnapping under Victor's name and invoked full police cooperation. In the silence that followed, Victor himself entered the warehouse, flanked by Lily and Claire on one side, and Amanda on the other. Amanda broke down as she embraced her sister, tears mingling with relief and rage. Victor's gaze fixed on the spot where Aristotle Dumas had once stood, his expression icily serene. He believed that justice would follow swiftly, arrests, lawsuits, the unraveling of Dumas's network layer by layer. Yet Lily, watching Amanda's sobs subside into quiet gratitude, knew better than to assume the battle was over. Aristotle's reach had been vast, and if any thread of his empire remained intact, he would seek retribution. Their victory would be measured not in a single raid, but in years of vigilance, safeguarding Amanda's family in witness protection, dismantling shell corporations one by one, and fortifying the alliance between the Newmans and the Winters clan. Even now, as dawn breaks on the storied streets of Genoa City, the aftershocks of the rescue reverberate through the corridors of power. Boardrooms once humming with corporate gossip now whisper of a ruthless saboteur unmasked. Social media erupts with celebratory posts, but only Amanda, Lily, Claire, and Victor know the full price of that night's gamble. The world sees a triumphant reunion, they have witnessed a seamless rescue. What they cannot see is the fragile thread that binds these four together, a bond forged in crisis, tempered by courage, and tested by the knowledge that in their world, peace is always provisional. For as long as Aristotle Dumas drew breath, his story would linger like a ghost at the edge of every victory, reminding them that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And so, with hearts steeled and alliances sealed, they step forward into the uncertain dawn, determined that the next chapter of their lives will be written on their terms. It was a bright Saturday morning in the Abbott household, the kind of spring day that seems to promise new beginnings as much as it bathes every surface in golden light. Diane Abbott had spread out a stack of glossy travel brochures across the mahogany dining table, pages of sun-washed Mediterranean shores, alpine chalets swathed in snow, and remote tropical atolls ringed by coral reefs. She looked up at Jack with a playful smile. "I thought we might start with the Amalfi Coast," she said, tapping the page showing pastel houses clinging to cliffs above a cerulean sea. "Or perhaps a month in Tuscany, sampling wines and wandering through vineyards." Jack leaned back in his chair, folding his arms behind his head as he surveyed the collection. He wore his trademark easy grin. "It all looks wonderful, Diane. I trust your judgment. Wherever you decide to take me, I'll be happy." His tone was warm, devoid of any trace of the corporate burdens that usually weighed him down. To him, this trip was a promise of escape, a chance to slip out of the relentless power plays of Genoa City and simply be husband and wife exploring the world together. Meanwhile, up the grand staircase and through ornate double doors, Kyle Abbott was already in motion. He had discovered a basket of homemade candy bars and cookies. Claire's handiwork, delivered in secret to sweeten the office hours of any unsuspecting executive brave enough to work on a weekend. Kyle couldn't resist. He plucked a chocolate chip cookie from the basket and took a bite, humming in approval at its perfect balance of sweetness and salt. He had intended to review the quarterly financial projections for Jabot before the weekend, but Claire's gift had distracted him until his mother's voice drifted down the hallway. He swallowed the last crumbs of cookie and hustled into the adjoining study, briefcase in hand, ready to appear industrious. Diane stood by the window overlooking the rose garden, her expression a blend of hope and concern as she clutched one of the brochures. "Jack and I have been talking," Diane began gently, leaning against the window frame. "We might be gone for up to a month. I'm not completely sure that's wise." Her voice wavered slightly. She had always balanced optimism with caution, and the prospect of being away from Genoa for so long stirred her protective instincts. Kyle shot her a reassuring smile, fully confident in his own abilities to keep the family's enterprises running smoothly. "Mom, don't worry. I'll be here, overseeing Jabot and coordinating with Claire on the Newman Abbott merger. Everything will go off without a hitch. You two deserve this time together." He set his briefcase down on the antique desk and ran a hand through his thick hair, the same tousled look he had sported since his college days. Diane paused, studying her son's face as if searching for a flicker of doubt. "And Audra?" she asked quietly, cracking open her motherly concern like a whisper in the wind. "I know you've been spending a lot of time with her at the office. Are you certain that won't cause problems while we're away?" Kyle's jaw tightened ever so slightly. Audra, his newest partner in the company's digital marketing division, had indeed occupied much of his thoughts lately. Her sharp intellect and fearless negotiation tactics had impressed him, but Diane's worry cut deeper. What if others saw their alliance as something more? "Mom," he said firmly, "my work with Audra is strictly professional. Whatever happens between us won't compromise Jabot or the merger. You know me, when I make a decision, I see it through with total focus." He paused, his tone growing more introspective. "Anyway, Claire's a smart one. I'm sure she's more concerned about the merger deadlines than who I'm having coffee with." He managed a half-smile, but Diane's brows furrowed. "I'm not so sure," she replied, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "Claire cares about this company almost as much as she cares about our family. If she thinks you might be distracted, she'll push back." Kyle took a deep breath and stepped closer, placing a hand on his mother's shoulder. His confidence was his hallmark. He believed in his ability to control every variable, to steer any situation to his favor. "Mom, I've done my homework. I've anticipated every possible contingency. I'm not going to let personal matters derail our plans." He straightened, smoothing the lapels of his jacket. "You and Dad focus on your honeymoon. I've got everything under control here." Diane nodded slowly, but the crease between her brows remained. All right, she said with a small sigh. Just promise me you'll remember who you are, the choices you've made and the person you've become. You once sold out your own family in the heat of competition. That drive to win, that ruthless edge, doesn't ever just disappear. She pressed her lips together, her gaze searching his. Kyle's eyes flickered, acknowledging both the compliment and the warning. He straightened his shoulders, the familiar rush of determination shining in his eyes. That edge, he said quietly, is what makes me who I am. And I promise you, Mom, it's on my side this time. He gave her a quick, confident nod before lifting his briefcase. Now, I have a few charts to annotate before we finalize the migration plan. I'll see you at dinner. As Diane watched Kyle walk away, her shoulders slumped with equal parts pride and worry. Jack's laughter drifted from the dining room, and she forced a smile, reminding herself that every Abbott had to find their own path. For Kyle, that path was paved with ambition and the relentless pursuit of success, qualities she had once celebrated in her son, yet had learned to fear when she saw how far he would go to win.